All right, well, good morning, everybody. I am Brian Hester. I'm the Chief Deputy for the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, and I'm here to give you an update this morning and to answer some questions for you with regard to the shooting that took place Monday night at Ellis Park in Fort Pierce, an MLK event and celebration. I know you guys are extremely anxious to ask me quite a few questions, and you've been waiting. And listen, thank you for your patience in that. I know some of you came out Monday night and we gave a statement, and we put some information out yesterday. And I put some information out late yesterday afternoon with a couple of the news channels that happened to be at the City Council meeting in Fort Pierce, where I stood alongside Chief Burney and addressed the City Council on this issue. But first, just let me say that Sheriff's Office and Sheriff Mascara, our families, the Sheriff's Office, our condolences go out to all the families that were affected by this incident, and especially to the family who lost a loved one and a member of our community, and it's tragic. So just to kind of recap a little bit, as we reported earlier on Monday night at approximately, I say Monday night, it was Monday evening at approximately 5:20 p.m. During a celebration at Avenue M and 13th Street at Ellis Park there in Fort Pierce. It was a let me just say, it was a family celebration. It was kids, there were bounce houses, there were food trucks, it was a family event, there was a car show going on. And during that, an altercation broke out, and it resulted in 8 people being shot, and one of which, tragically passed away, and that was 25-year-old Nikisha Bryant of Fort Pierce. So 8 individuals were shot, and then there were 4 others that were injured during that incident that were transported to the hospital with minor injuries. That all kind of, their injuries were a result of the chaos that ensued after the shots being fired. I know, and I can tell you today, this morning, that out of the 7 other victims that were shot, 2 remain in the hospital and are in stable condition. The others have all been released based on the information that we have at this time. So let's talk about the incident a little bit, and I may be for a minute, but I know that we initially said that this was a gang-related incident. We no longer believe that it was, I won't say a gang, it wasn't a gang incident, 2 rival gangs that got into a beef there. We've determined that this was a dispute between 2 or more individuals that took place there at the event, and some of those individuals that were involved in this dispute are documented gang members, and that's what led us to that initial stance that this was a gang related event. While they may be gang documented members, some of the people that were involved in this, we don't believe that this was 2 rival gangs that showed up on the grounds of this event and decided to go at each other. So just let me kind of make that clear. Let me finish all my points, okay, and then I'll let you come back, and you can come back and ask me a question. Maybe some of the stuff I say will clarify, what you're going to ask. Let me say that we have identified one person of interest. I'm going to show you a picture of that person today. And I'm going to tell you about that person, but they're wanted right now on felony VOP charges. We have active warrants in the system, and we believe that this person was present during the incident. And his name is Frederick Lamar Johnson, Jr., and he is 27 years old, and he is from Fort Pierce. So we want to get this person into custody immediately. And so anybody with information on this person, we're going to talk about how you can give us information here more towards the end, but we are actively looking for Frederick Lamar Johnson, Jr., 27 years old, from Fort Pierce, and this is a picture. I'll post this up when we're done, and you guys will be able to get that a little more clearly. I don't want to talk a lot about the investigation because there is still a very in-depth and aggressive investigation that is going on. I will follow up in a minute. I will tell you that since this incident occurred Monday night and I showed up on scene, we've had all available resources at the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, boots on the ground working day and night, and we have made some extremely good progress on this case. I just don't, again, one of the reasons we haven't come out and answered a lot of questions is because I know what you guys are going to ask. I know what you want to know, and I want to protect the integrity of this case. And we do that for the victim that tragically lost her life, and the other people that were shot, and all the people who the freedom to go and enjoy a family event was taken away that day. And people who are still calling my phone and saying, is it safe to go over here? And so these people that did this, they took away people's feeling of safety and freedom in this community. And I can promise you that our detectives and the sheriff's office, we're going to catch them and we're going to make arrests in this case. And but I don't want to talk a lot about the specifics other than we're looking for Frederick Johnson. Just to let you know, I talked about our resources that have been boots on the ground as well, and we've had a lot of help come alongside of us, and I just want to acknowledge that. The fire department did a phenomenal job that night, so you have to recognize the fire department. Fort Pierce Police Department has been alongside us from the beginning. That night, I can tell you that within the first minute and a half, there were over 20 law enforcement personnel on that scene within that first minute and a half from Fort Pierce and from the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office. Chief Burney contacted me first thing yesterday morning, and our agencies have worked very close together on trying to track down who's responsible and where these people are. The ATF, federal agency, as well as FBI, the AUSA, which is the United States state attorneys, their assistant AUSA here, I've been in close contact with, and they are helping with this and giving assistance, as well as our state attorney's office here in St. Lucie County. We've worked very closely with. So we've had a lot of help. We've had a lot of resources that have been dedicated to this. We continue to work alongside of all of those people as we go forward. I know you guys are probably got some questions about the event. There were approximately 1,000 plus attendees, I would say, that were there at that event, and I can hopefully answer some of the questions you have with regard to that event. We did have a detail, and when I say a detail, that means that we had deputies that were working at that event. They have been contracted to work at that event, which is normal for a county facility because there's protocol that goes into play with that. There were 2 deputies there that were working, and there was also in the contract supposed to be armed security provided by the vendor who put on the event. So I can't tell you much about the armed security. I just read that in the contract, and that also helps determine. There's a lot of determining factors how many deputies, because I know that's a question you got. How do you decide? Well, it depends. It depends on the information that is given to us. Is there alcohol? Is it a family event? How many people are going to be there? Do you have other security personnel? So with regard to that, we did have 2 deputies that were on scene. I can tell you that I've reviewed the deputy's body cam. They were stationed at the south end, kind of near the pool area, and it was sort of for traffic control and for crowd control. But where they were stationed immediately when the shots rang out, I watched body cam footage of these deputies running right into the middle. Now they ran towards the gunfire, which is what they're trained to do. But when I watch those body cam videos, what I see is chaos. I see people running in all different directions. I see kids, I see adults, I see people laying on the ground. You don't know if the people laying on the ground are hiding behind cars, and people were laying behind anything they could lay behind. And then you see people that you don't know if they're wounded or not wounded, and our deputies are asking, where did it come from? Where are they? Where are they? And people are just, it's mass chaos. People are pointing in different directions. They're shot. They're yelling out, people are screaming, running, trying to find their kids. no real direction for our deputies as to where, and when you got 1,000+ people running, who's a suspect? So they did a really good job of going there immediately when, the shots only lasted, probably less than 7 to 10 seconds, if that long. And immediately, once they got into that area and there no longer were any shots ringing out, they started rendering aid to people and going around and trying to prioritize and getting on the radio. And so they did a phenomenal job, and then all the responding units did a great job as well. So there were some heroes in the community there that day as well. That's important to recognize, and we don't know all their names and who they are, but I could see from different footage that I've reviewed and our detectives and staff have reviewed that there were heroes there that day that were doing CPR, that were helping people, that were tending to wounds, putting tourniquets on, loading people up in cars and taking them to the hospital as well. So I think that's really important, that how our community rallied around those people and came together. So the last thing I want to address real quick, and I'm sure you guys will probably have some more rumors, but there was a rumor that came out yesterday that, well, there were a couple of rumors initially that someone came here and this was a targeted attack on an MLK event. Not true. I told you what this incident arose from. There was also a rumor that about a bolo that was put out to all the agencies this past weekend out of Indian River County Sheriff's Office about a subject who made some kind of threats to come to an MLK event and shoot it up in Fort Pierce. And I can tell you that that is not related to this incident at all. While there was a bolo with that information that went out, it was investigated by our detectives and so forth, and it was non-credible type threat, and it had nothing to do with this incident that occurred. This incident stemmed from a dispute between a couple of individuals, and they chose to, and I got to remember that we're not only live streaming but on camera, but they chose a way to resolve that dispute that basically had no concern for the lives of all the other 1,000+ people that were enjoying a family event. And when they pulled those guns out and they started shooting at each other, they didn't take into account, and they had no care in the world about anybody around them. And those people that were hit were innocent bystanders. Nikisha Bryant was an innocent person with her child enjoying that family event, and she was shot because some individual with no concern or care for others or their lives decided they wanted to shoot at someone over a dispute. Now, I'm putting that very nicely, let me just say, because I know there's a lot of people watching, but you can all read between the lines. And, we are going to go after them with everything we've got, and we're going to ensure that we put a very solid case together. And I just hope that the community comes and stands up and gets behind putting these people away. And that's the last thing I want to do. I know I said that was the last thing I was going to do. But I want to ask the community, and I did this last night after the city council meeting, and what I want to ask the community is a couple of things. Number one, if you were at the event, whether you saw anything or didn't see anything, our detectives want to talk to you. I know that's a lot of people. That's 1,000+ people, but our detectives want to talk to you. All right? There's information that we want. Maybe you saw someone, maybe you saw something, maybe you know something that you don't think is information pertinent to us, but let us talk to you. I'm going to give you a couple phone numbers that you can call, and I'll tell you how we're going to do that in a minute. But if you were a witness to this, or you saw what happened, come forward. Our community can't stand for this. We can't tolerate it. I know people are afraid. I know people are afraid of retaliation. But I can assure you, I've talked to the AUSA, I've talked to our federal partners, we will protect those people that come forward. We will ensure their safety of their family. We will do whatever we have to do to protect those people. But we need the community to come forward. If the people that were there that saw this and saw people pull out guns, because I promise they didn't do it in a vacuum, they did it in front of 1,000+ people. And I'm sure somebody was probably recording. So if you've got that information, please come forward with it for the community's sake and for the sake of all these victims and the victim who tragically lost her life. Now I'm going to give you a couple of, I don't have a phone number. I'm going to give you a phone number, 772-462-3230, and we'll make sure that if you need that number again, that our PIO provides that to you before you leave here today. But 772-462-3230. That number is manned by a detective that is working with this case from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night, and would continue to do that today, tomorrow, and Friday. Okay? And that's the number we want anyone that was at the event to call, or anybody that is witness. As always, you can always call Treasure Coast Crime Stoppers with information that you can remain anonymous as well. But tips, we got a lot of tips coming in, don't we, guys? We got tons of tips. Tips don't prosecute cases. Tips don't get arrest warrants. Tips lead us in a direction, and we're in that direction. Now we need eyewitnesses. And that's my plea to our community this morning is come forward. Come forward with that. So with that, I'll take some questions from you guys. Will, I saw it. I knew it.
I raised my hand.
Good job.
I wanted to go back, if possible, to the when you're talking about the gang issue and gang related or the dispute between gangs. I just want to clarify. You're saying that the dispute appears to have been between individuals who were not necessarily gang members, but folks that were with these two individuals were documented gang members. Can you just clarify that? Because that's a critical point to make.
That's not what let me clarify that for you. And when you say a dispute between two individuals, minimum of two individuals in this dispute. Okay, let's just leave it at that. As far as being gang members, individuals that we know were involved in this are documented gang members. Okay, some of them. Maybe not all of them, but what I'm saying is it was not a gang retaliation of, it wasn't like two gangs showed up and said, let's have a beef with each other. The dispute was not gang related, is what our belief is.
So some of the individuals that were there and present, they may have been gang members.
Correct.
Or associates that were involved in the dispute, but it wasn't gang A, say, let's go shoot up gang B or something like that.
That's correct. That is a precise.
Can you give us the spelling of Miss Bryant's name and her date of birth? Because we've got conflicting information on her age.
Okay, I don't have the date of birth here with me. I'm sure that we can provide that, but she was 29 years old, and the spelling on that is Nikkitia. And then Bryant, Bryant.
Of Fort Pierce?
That's correct. And her family, has been working with our victims, or our victims advocates have been with the family, and the family, has provided information to the media as well. So, but again, very tragic. I listened to some stories last night at Fort Pierce about. She was a cheer mom. She had her 6-year-old daughter with her when this happened. That could have been a 6-year-old, that was shot and killed.
To clarify, the daughter was 9 is what we had confirmed with the brother.
9? Okay, I'm sorry. I was told 6 last night, but thank you.
I do have a question. I know that you kind of touched on the people that are employed, deputies that are employed at an event like this. But can you kind of go more into detail? You said 2 deputies were there. This is a 1,000-people event, plus they have their own security. How many people should be employed for an event of 1,000 people? What's the protocol?
Well, I went back and we do have protocols. So there's anybody that requests, the sheriff's office to do what we would consider an off-duty detail. We have criteria. I can tell you only what was filled out on our form, because that's all I have access to currently, is what they call in here and fill out. And I can tell you that the information we had for this event was that, let me just find where it is on my document. And that brings me to another point I want to come back with, but it states that the number of attendees 300 to 599. It states, will alcohol be served? No. Number of deputies requested? 2. Detailed description, and it gives the detailed description: kids zone, family fun, car show. And then it also says that 4 armed security were hired. So based on that, the criteria for 2 deputies fit into that. So based on the criteria we were given, the number that we provided, because, and our guys will tell you, a lot of times we scrutinize these if they're serving alcohol or if they're doing other things. We require more deputies, or we put supervisors on scene. So it all goes based on the information of what's provided to us. And they have to fill out a permit with the county and, county paperwork, and then they have to come fill this out with us.
Do you think that there should be changes in the future after an event like this? I did speak with a lot of people in the community, people who are from the area, who say when they hear about this event every year, it's a known event that typically does have issues. Obviously, this is on a grander scale of things, but do you feel that changes need to be made at this point as far as staffing goes? Could that have made a difference?
Well, we can always take a tragic incident and then speculate, well, we could, what do we say? Well, let's make it 10 deputies, but does that change it? Because whether there were 1,000 plus people that showed up, and let me kind of clarify, inside the event, there probably wasn't 1,000 people, but if you've been to that scene, you got 13th Street, then you got Avenue M, and you've got Avenue O, and so people might not necessarily go into the car show, but they're parking all along the side and hanging out, and people are enjoying a celebration. And people all throughout our community have the right to enjoy those celebrations. And whether you've got 100 people, or whether you've got 500 people, or whether you got 2,000 people, it only took 2 to have a dispute, or 2 or more, let's say, but it only took a couple of people who ran into each other and decided they wanted to have an altercation. This event went from 12 to 6 p.m. It went almost 5.5 hours without incident, with kids and families enjoying everything that took place, and it was taking place. But at the last hour there, 2 or more individuals, I keep saying 2, and I don't take that in any way, but 2 or more individuals had a dispute with each other and chose to handle it this way. Our focus needs to be on that, the gun violence, people carrying guns illegally, and the tragedy that they had such a lack of respect for everybody else around them. I think, all in all, we could go back and always Monday morning quarterback that portion of it, but let's look at it totally. Was it really because there wasn't enough security in somebody's mind? I don't think so.
There seems to be, I guess, some discrepancies, because you have 300 to 500 people with your information that was from the organizer, whoever. We pulled the county permit, and it was 150 people. Both, I'm assuming yours said no alcohol, the county permit said alcohol.
Correct.
There was alcohol at the event.
Yeah.
There was over 1,000 people at the event, so can anybody be held liable, or was there ever a point when your deputies saw, hey, this is getting to be more than 150 or more than 500 people? Do we call in more resources to kind of assist in this event until it gets over? Is it getting out of hand, essentially?
Yeah, and again, let me follow back up that it went on for 5.5 hours with not a single problem at all. So there was never a point that our deputies felt anything was out of hand. If it would have, I can assure you that our deputies would have called the on-duty supervisor and have more units. Now, in any of these type of events, our on-duty shifts know that these events are going on, and they're well aware that if anything, and it doesn't matter whether it was this celebration or whether it was, country music celebration down in South PSL, it doesn't matter. They're always aware that these events are going on, and there's a potential that something, anytime you have a gathering, there's a potential for an event. But I'm a little bit troubled that there's a discrepancy in numbers and a discrepancy in the information we have. Can someone be held liable? Well, for me to sit here and determine that today would be, out of line. I think that's up to the county, up to us, to look at, what we were told and what happened, what took place. And could there be some potential liability? Maybe, but, I'm not really, that's not what I'm here to talk about.
Have
You
the
know.
victims been cooperative? I'm sure you guys have been in touch with them in and out of the hospital. Maybe that's where you got your tip about our one person of interest. But we know, just walking through that community yesterday, like you mentioned, a lot of people are afraid of retaliation.
Yeah.
Has that kind of been the case with the victims as well?
As far as I know, and I'm just being honest with you, as far as I know, the victims didn't have anything to do with it. They were just standing wherever they were standing when the incident broke out and were hit by stray bullets.
Even the gang members that were involved in the dispute, assuming that they were one of our 8 victims.
Well, I don't know that anyone that was shot is a person of interest to you right now.
So you don't think that that one of the shooters that were trying to shoot at each other, they missed? Is that kind of what you're saying? The shooters didn't hit their intended target
There's no victim that was shot that we're interested in right now.
in terms of being like a suspect.
Right, correct.
And speaking of person or people of interest, I know you gave a little bit of info about Frederick Lamar Johnson. Can you kind of elaborate? Just confused, is that someone that you think perhaps was a shooter or may have information as a witness? Where does he kind of tie into that, and how can the public help track him down for y'all?
He was there when it happened, okay? And I won't elaborate on any more than that. So he has an active felony warrant. We want to get him into custody, and obviously we want to talk to him.
And what was that felony for?
I think it was a drug-related charge. It was a violation of probation for a drug-related charge.
Can you
Felony drug-related charge.
clarify how many guns may have been fired? I think you told us either yesterday or the day before there were 3 different caliber guns. I don't know if there were multiple guns of the same caliber, or if we should imply that that was actually 3 firearms that were fired.
Yeah, and I didn't mention that today, but we did recover 50-plus projectiles from the scene.
But projectiles or cartridge casings?
Casings,
Okay.
sorry. But shell casings from the scene, and 3 or more calibers from the scene. Those shell casings.
Chief, can you talk about the security surrounding, I guess, the integrity of the investigation? Yesterday we saw ATF out there and your guys out there doing final sweeps, but we didn't see any crime scene tape. We saw people from the neighborhood just kind of walking through the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any concern with regards to that?
No, there's not, because when we go out that initial night, and I know that, a lot of times you may see a scene held for several days, but when we go out, due to technology and equipment, we have equipment that basically we plot down, and it takes full 360 pictures and scans of the crime scene. And I think our people were out there pretty much most of the night that night, collecting their evidence, sketching the scene, doing everything that we needed to do on that scene. So at that point, we can release that scene. We went back out yesterday just for the sole purpose of, and those were canines that ATF provided out of Miami, that their specialty is finding shell casings and finding guns. And they actually were able to find a couple more shell casings that we didn't find during the nighttime hours. But no, once we do our initial, scene reconstruction and so forth, and we plot everything, it's all logged in. We can come back here and recreate it.
In terms, you mentioned earlier, early on, talking about the ATF, U.S. Attorney's Office, FBI, in other words, federal resources. Do you think, what can the U.S. Attorney's Office do with this? You're talking like a federal prosecution, or can you elaborate on the type of resources that they're helping you guys with, or the significance of them being involved?
Sure. Federal aid, I just told you ATF, what they provided.
Yeah, but
that's one resource.
The U.S. Attorney's Office, that's like
Right.
the prosecutors. Are they going to prosecute this case? Is this a
They
federal
could.
crime?
They could.
What would the crime be?
So if you have a felony gun charge, and let's say you're a convicted felon and used a weapon in the commission of a homicide or an incident like this, then it could be charged federally. And so there's a potential, but the other things that the AUSA offers is some support, some resources. And so when I talk about protection for witnesses that come forward that may be in fear for their life, I was on the phone this morning talking to our local AUSA about some avenues. If we do have witnesses or people come forward with information they're afraid, some avenues that they can offer to help us protect those witnesses as well. So there's a lot of things they can kind of provide us with.
What can they do to help with this sort of protecting witnesses?
We really didn't get into those discussions. It was just an overview discussion, and she was going to research some things for me. But there are things that they can do. I mean, we'd sit here and talk for 30 minutes to go into that. Okay, but that's the gist of their involvement.
Doing any increased patrols in that immediate area, just with people being fearful? I mean, we talk to kids in that community that are afraid to walk to school.
Yeah.
Because of violence like this that I guess has been a repeat issue for quite a few years.
Yeah, and Fort Pierce is obviously doing a little bit more in the community, following us with their victims advocates, going into some of the schools. We're in the schools as well, there's counselors that are talking to some of the kids who, I mean, and you got to think, it's not just the kids that have trauma, you got adults that have trauma from this as well. Believe it or not, they do. And, so I just got off the phone right before I walked in here with one of our local pastors in the Fort Pierce community, and he was talking to me about him and some other pastors getting together and what they were doing in the community. So they all come alongside of us anytime. A couple of pastors called me yesterday morning, and they were going to talk to some families and so forth. But yes, we have stepped up our patrols, our investigative units, our special investigation units. They're out doing more as well.
Is this I don't want to say the biggest, is this the most people shot in a single scenario that you can remember during your years of service here?
During my years of service, it's the most that we've had. Scott, can you remember any more? We've been here about the same amount of time.
How long has that been?
I've been here since '98, so I think Scott's been here a little bit longer than me. So, but I don't remember anything of this magnitude with this amount of people shot. And that's it. That's what troubles me the most about this is where and how it happened. And I think that's where the focus. We got to get that focus on. And I keep trying to find the proper words to use to talk about these individuals that were involved, but just I can't even. It's not conscionable to me that their dispute, that the fact there's kids and families around and they just pull guns out and start indiscriminately firing. And then think it's okay and take off and go hide and do whatever they do. And that's what I really, I pray for that the people that were there that saw this, don't be afraid. Come tell us what you saw. We will put these people away.
Chief, just going back a couple of years, I was looking for a parallel. Back in 2018, December of 2018, there was a young mother of a toddler, shot and killed in front of her house. In the following year, you guys initiated a gang task force. I know you were trying to diminish the role of gangs in here, but then in the end of 2019, you guys made big arrests, about 70 gang people, if I remember right. Would this case, I mean, do you guys still have that gang task force in place?
Yeah. Let me tell you this. While this I don't think was a gang dispute, gangs are. We talked about this probably 6 months ago. I think gangs are a problem, and I think the community's afraid of these individuals that are involved in these gangs. I think they use bullying, intimidation, and unfortunately, many of these gang members are young teenage individuals. Their minds haven't matured enough, and they think about only the moment and live in the moment, and there's no regard for others' lives and safety. All you guys got to do is watch the videos that were posted on Facebook, and as people's personal videos that they posted on Facebook, as shots are ringing out, there's people laughing. There's people dancing and laughing as people are dying and getting shot. Gangs are a problem. Here, and we do have a gang task force, and we have our intelligence unit and our real-time crime center, and we've done a lot to, you guys all know, if you go back in history, we've dismantled several gangs. And the minute we dismantle one, now another one's popping up. And so I think that's a whole nother community conversation. But I will tell you, and I'll publicly tell you right now, we're going to make every gang member and their gang, their life miserable. And we're gonna, until we put these people that are responsible for this in jail, you're not gonna be safe if you're a gang member.